Hey guys, Wyatt Claypool here. One of the things that annoys me most about the tariff issue between Canada and the United States is how every Canadian pundit seems dedicated to not actually talking about what the Canadian government may be doing wrong in the negotiations. I need to show you this segment from CBC's Power and Politics, where supposedly they have a conservative, liberal, and NDP representative discuss the issues, and every single one of them will refuse to lay a finger on the Mark Carney Liberal government's overpromising on the trade issue and their inability to actually negotiate with the Americans. We just sit around saying Trump's bad, right? Orange man bad. I don't like Trump. This was unfair. Okay. Some of those things can be true. I don't think the tariffs are exactly fair. I think supply management tariffs on dairy and poultry from the US are not fair to the United States, but the tariffs that the US is striking back with are disproportionately large. You could say that's a negotiating tactic. Fair enough. You could say that's not fair. But by the way, what does it change for us to sit around just saying how unfair it is over and over again? Eventually, you actually need to have a real adult position on what you are going to do in order to get to a better trade deal. So, I need to show you the segment from the CBC. Then I need to show you some other stuff I had posted on X about this because I at least think I raised some good questions about what is Mark Carney doing right now. I've said this on other episodes, but I also want to reiterate it here because it's just been baffling to me how basically Carney's doing nothing. At the time we're supposedly in a crisis, and he keeps saying that the negotiations are very intense. He's traveling to PEI. He's going to the Northwest Territories to meet with people he's met with dozens of times before. But here is the CBC segment. And by the way, guys, like the video, subscribe if you're not a subscriber, and leave a comment on what you think.
Fabulous.
Greg, I'll start with you. I don't even know how to set this up, just because I feel like we've been talking a lot about this, but it does seem like a bit of an escalation, perhaps, from the president today, at least on the rhetorical side of things, saying that there really isn't much of a negotiation going on. How do you read his comments?
Well, I'm glad you asked me about Jeffrey Epstein because really what I want to...
Oh my goodness, Greg Mckran's so funny, guys. Trump and Epstein. It's funny because that's something the left is attacking Trump over right now with no actual basis to it. Yes, Trump was friends with Epstein in the 90s and then kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago in 2002 and then helped give information leading to his first conviction back in 2006. So what are you talking about? But anyways, that just annoyed me off the bat. But that's going to set the theme for this 5 minutes that we're going to watch through. Just talking about Trump.
I mean, everything else, if we're looking at this, and we should be, this is our job, is to look at what the impact on Canada is. But if you look at things in Washington on the bigger picture, the president is in a lot of trouble, probably the most trouble he's been in thus far. His base is angry with him. Gallup polling is not going great for him. Other polls, not so great. And
his polling is actually totally fine right now. You can not like Trump. Obviously, you can do whatever you want. His polling is really not that bad right now. I'll pull up Real Clear Politics that does a aggregation of all the different polls. The problem right now for trying to say that Trump's doing really bad because of Gallup is that there's Trafalgar and Inside Advantage being one of the most accurate in the country. And those put him actually quite well up. I'm going to quickly bring this up on screen so you guys can see it. But these are the current approval rating polls. And naturally, there is a lot of anti-Trump rhetoric out there. So he's always going to have a more negative approval rating than someone like Barack Obama would have had or Joe Biden would have had early on in his presidency. But you look at this and it's like, on average, a 51.3% disapproval rating, 46.3% approval. It's pretty dang close. And it's usually easier to dislike a politician than like a politician. And then when you go to Insider Advantage and Trafalgar, again, Insider Advantage after Big Data poll was the second most accurate pollster in 2024. They give him a positive 2. But there's a Gallup poll out there that gives Trump a bad rating. So I guess that, rather than actually doing analysis about the trade conflict and what Canada could do, let's just keep talking about that Trump's unpopular. Did you know that? People don't like Trump, even the United States.
Impact of his decisions around trade We're starting to see them. We mentioned last week, month over month, the car travel to the United States from Canadians. I saw a couple of articles this week about the impact of the good provinces that have done bans on American alcohol. Shame about Saskatchewan and Alberta, but that is sending a message to them as well. So there's a lot of other things. And then if you watch the broader clip today, when
Sending a message, okay, that's great. How are we going to turn that message into a trade deal? That's the problem. There are people out there like Greg Mckran who just care about the symbolism of what Canada's doing. Who cares if like average consumers are hurt by this and he can keep buying himself heavily patterned suits?
he was asked the question, it wasn't as centered on Canada as some of the, if you just take it in that little slip. So he's got a lot of issues. The problem with, if he pursues the tariffs, the estimates right now is on average, this is going to cost Americans $2,400 extra a year. The impact means that coffee for Americans will go up, shoes, appliances. And then when he's talking about copper goes into everything. Yeah. So I know that it is our, like as Canadians, we tense up, but there are a lot of other problems as well. And the other thing I'd just say to the folks that are watching is there's a really interesting / weird article in the New Yorker on the Trade Secretary Lutnick. And he, I guess at 1 o'clock in the morning when he's in bed, Trump calls him and they discuss things. And one of the things he mentioned was, we talk about Canadian steel. Now, I can't wait for Saturday Night Live to come back on. I could just see, like someone playing Lutnick with cold.
What is this? I know none of us like the CBC, but I'm usually expecting a sort of base level of competence, if not very rigid professionalism from their people. What is it? We're talking about who he would like to see playing Howard Lutnick on SNL and how would he like the skit to look? Can we talk about what Canada has to do to get to a trade deal? Well, did you know that Trump's not as popular as you think in America? Okay, Carney's not as popular in Canada as some people would like to think. And him failing on this trade deal could sink his approval ratings pretty hard. I know people are saying, oh, well, Carney's actually still doing quite well. I saw this from Polling Canada, not to put a voice like that on Polling Canada, but people, it's more so the people that interpret the stats that Polling Canada posts. They're like, oh, well, Carney's actually super popular right now. It's like, yeah, kind of. He's popular because he's in a honeymoon phase, but when your approval rating is only 52 to 56% in your honeymoon phase, that means when you're out of your honeymoon phase, you're going to be below 50%. And once Canadians realize that he has no intention of making a pipeline, that the trade deal didn't get done when he promised that he knew how to deal with people like Trump, and we might actually be paying 35% tariffs on non-USMCA compliant goods for the next few months before we strike a new deal, that's going to hurt him really bad. And USMCA compliance is not a get-out-of-jail-free card because it costs more money to become USMCA compliant because it requires more sourcing of materials from only within Canada, the US, and Mexico. You have to have all the manufacturing done in Canada. Material sourced here has to be there's extra paperwork and whatnot. It still adds costs to the average good. It's just better than the tariff. So a lot of people are not going to be super impressed with the economy in a few months if Mark Carney doesn't figure this out. And we have these people, and Greg Mckran, by the way, is the Liberal strategist. We have these people talking about what they'd like to see on SNL.
Cream in their face and a princess phone. But this is really, really bizarre. So, I think that the premiers did good work this week. President Obed from ITK was on before. He's having conversations. We need to keep doing what we're doing. And, if you look at what the Treasury Secretary said last Sunday or what he said last Monday, he was hinting at delays. Yeah. So it's really tough. It's like trying to put a thumbtack in Mercury.
Fred, what's the next play for the government?
Play for this government? Well, when you're dealing with... And
to preface, Fred Delory here, not a very good campaign manager. If you're trying to run a campaign, do not hire Fred Delory. He was the guy who was running Aaron O'Toole's 2021 general election campaign. I believe his leadership too. But he is supposedly the conservative on this panel.
A man built from chaos. What's the next play? I don't know. the issue is, like, this is typical Trump. This is just, he postures, he publicly negotiates, he throws things out. The fact that Canada's, it almost feels like a bit of pride as a Canadian that we don't have a deal with this man, because there is no real dealing with this guy right now. Obviously, we have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. We don't know how these negotiations are going and how they're going to end up. We have supposedly a week to this deadline, but there's no such thing as a deadline with Trump. There's nothing standard. There's nothing normal. There's nothing normal about this process. I think at the end of the day, though, Canada and the U.S., we're each other's most important trading partners. And there's, as Greg mentioned, there's so much pressure in the U.S. as well to make sure that there's some kind of deal alleviated here.
But what's the pressure in Canada? We keep talking about the United States, but we never get to the Canada side of it. The problem is, although Carney is trying to pretend, I've done great things. I've gotten a trade deal signed with France. I've gotten a trade deal signed with other EU countries, with the UK. I've been working on a deal with Japan or whatever. It's like, it doesn't matter. Trump has a better deal. Not only does he have a better deal with these countries that are more like, and they are the bigger economy and the more, the better country to usually trade with, because there's just more going on in the US, but they now have guaranteed buying deals with the EU, that the EU is going to buy like $700 billion of oil and gas products over the next couple of years. They're buying certain amounts of American goods. Canada doesn't have that. We just have some generic thing where you might trade with us. That'd be great. And we'll try and have fewer duties on you. That's all we have going on. But every time one of these panels speaks out, it's that Trump's a man made of chaos. It's hard to make deals with him. Maybe it's good that Canada does not yet have a deal with him. I guess if you want to write in your blog about how you stood up to him, and you want to like pretend to be a big man, I guess it makes you look good. It's not going to make you look good in the long run when people's actual economic fiscal position is worse. But apparently, again, this is the discourse on CBC. You can have these generic nothing opinions and apparently be a paid talking head on the CBC.
But there's also a lot of distractions that Trump guys are trying to throw out right now. They're dealing with a lot of domestic issues themselves that are not good. That I'm sure that's what's keeping him up at night, not a trade deal a trade crisis that he has created with his closest trading partner. So, what's the next play here? I don't think anyone has any idea.
Mel?
I would say, I agree with what both of you have said. I think the only difference for what the next play is I think the government needs to not forget that they can't stop communicating with people. The fact that I know this happens every Friday. It feels like he says something and we're asked to respond. The fact that the government's not, and I know you're not going to want to respond right away. And I know you're not going to want to.
I don't think we need to listen to the NDP person. I think we listen to people whose parties have more than 7% of the vote. What are these? This is nothing. But again, it's the Canadian institutions that don't want to deal with serious issues seriously. They don't want to be like, that Trump guy's crazy. He's insane. It's hard to deal with him. Like, okay, now what? We've gotten that out of our systems. Have we gotten the Trump's crazy stuff out of our systems? Can we now actually scrutinize what the Carney Liberals are doing to win the negotiations? I've had people online saying, well, Wyatt, they're not going to tell you what their negotiating position is. That would be really stupid to do during the negotiation. Can we get anything though? I don't know what Mark Carney and the Liberal negotiator team, I don't know what they're offering. I don't know what they're putting on the table. I don't know what they're demanding. I don't know if the negotiating team for Canada is even allowed to discuss supply management. What we've been hearing leaking from the negotiations is that the Canadian delegation is attempting to renegotiate rather than just get to a trade deal ASAP. We are trying to renegotiate the USMCA agreement. I know other people always put Canada first, like the CUSM, whatever. I just know USMCA better. They're like, oh, it's CASMA. Like USMCA is easier to say. I'm not going to say CASMA or whatever. But we are trying to negotiate a monster of a trade deal. At the same time, we could just say, okay, supply management is like quotas are weakened. Wisconsin cheese farmers can now, cheese makers can now send stuff into Canada. People in the Dakotas raising chickens can now send poultry products into Canada in a limited amount. We could do that and probably get out of the situation, but we don't want to. Supply management isn't even good for our country. It's good for fake national pride. Oh, we only use Canadian chicken, but it's a stupid quota system where it's not even allowing all Canadian farmers to produce. It gives like exclusive producing rights to certain farmers and then cuts other people out. Again, I keep saying Alberta, 12% of the population, 7% of the supply management quotas. But so we're trying to negotiate this monster of a trade deal over again rather than just signing a new trade deal to avoid a tariff. We want the entire trade agreement to be remade. That would also require Mexico to be involved unless we cut Mexico out of it. This would be a great thing to do 5 months ago, not late July, a few days before August. Why do you think Donald Trump says, yeah, I don't even know. I don't think we can negotiate. I don't think these negotiations are going anywhere. Canada doesn't want to. I guarantee it's pretty much because we are countering reasonable demands about scrapping or weakening supply management and saying, can we just fix the entirety of USMCA? Can we engage in what will be like a year-long process to change this thing instead of just signing a quick little trade agreement to alter some few things on both sides of the border to have basically low or no tariffs? It would be so easy. When you're dealing with Trump, you don't have to capitulate. You just have to give him the idea that he won something, that he triumphed and he can go back and chalk it up as a win. You just have to give Trump a win. You can actually win more in the negotiation than he does. He just needs a win. I'm not someone sitting here saying, oh, I hope Trump destroys Canada. I love Trump. I'm Canadian. I want Canada to win. Canada is not going to win and then America loses. America can't lose a trade negotiation with Canada, even if we have tariffs on for a few months. The thing is, yeah, will it hurt American consumers? Definitely. It'll hurt Canadians more because although the tariff is on American consumers buying Canadian goods, our economy is so weak, the indirect impact of not being able to export as easily into the US is going to crush so many businesses. We are more than 10% of the US's population, but we have less than 10% of the economic power, and we don't even barely pay for our own defense. Like, I can kind of see why the Americans get a little annoyed with Canada. I don't think it's fully justified, but it's pathetic that we're in this situation where we could be trying to actually negotiate seriously, come to an agreement that could get us out of this. And instead, it seems like both Carney and the Liberal negotiating team, as well as the talking heads on TV, just want to talk about how bad Trump is. Again, where is Mark Carney? I know there's an itinerary for him every day. I'm not saying that he's not where he says he is, but I'm saying, why is he in PEI? Why is he in like yesterday he was like announcing something about like the tolls being removed from the Confederation Bridge in the Maritimes. Okay, that's nice. He was in the Northwest Territories. He's probably going to like pop up in that tiny little spit of land of the Maritimes that the France owns. He's not like, again, I don't require him to be in Washington this entire time, but you think he'd be in his office and he'd be taking calls with American Congress people constantly and senators and trying to put pressure on individuals along the border and whatnot. You think he would be doing any sort of hardball? I'm not even saying capitulate. Play hardball, but do something. I don't even know what he's doing. We don't know what the Canadian position is. They would have to spill it onto the floor with every single detail. But the Americans never are hurt by just saying what they are doing. They generally tell Americans what their position is and what they're asking for. Canada could say, yeah, we put a few things on the table. Americans haven't bid at them yet, but it's all we can really do that's reasonable. They're not even saying something that vague. We don't know if they put anything on the table. And that's the problem. I can't actually say if we're negotiating in good faith or we're just entering the room saying, can you just take the tariffs off? Can you do it for us? I'll smile if you do it. Like, that's kind of where we're at right now, at least with the fog of war we have currently going on. And everything the Americans are saying sounds like there really isn't a real negotiation. They are just sitting in that room. The Canadian negotiators are saying, pretty please remove the tariffs. And they're like, no. And that's where we're at. Anyways, so that should be it for this video, guys. I will definitely be back later. I'm probably doing a live stream later today, so if you got time, I might be sitting down and I might be doing the same thing that Northern Perspectives is doing, watching the Battle River Crowfoot Candidates Forum as an excuse to, do something live. It's fun. I didn't do this because Northern Perspectives was doing this. I was actually independently wanting to do it, and then they ended up announcing they were doing it too. Great minds think alike. Perfectly fine. Go watch them if you like them better than me, but I will see you guys probably around 7 or 8 p.m. Mountain Time. But anyways, with that, see you guys all later.